Another great session coming up. You're going to hear from Movable Inc.'s VP of AI, Stefan Pinal, and our SVP of Product and Engineering, Aaron Roffel. They're going to crack open the black box of AI in your marketing program. And definitely be sure to lock in on this one, because after this, you'll be getting an AI Fundamentals Learning Badge. Just make sure you get scanned on your way out. Without further ado, let's welcome them to the stage.
Hello, everyone. So today, we're going to talk about decoding the AI landscape. It's going to be about how you, as a marketer, can cut through the noise. We talked about a lot AI yesterday, and there was a lot of information there. So how you can cut through the noise and make sense of all of that. And we're going to do some kind of a summary of everything you learned yesterday. But as well, we're going to go deep into the technology to give you a fundamental understanding of that. So I'm Stefan Pinal, VP of AI at Movable Inc.
Aaron Roffel, Senior Vice President of Product and Engineering for Movable Inc.
All right. So Aaron, let's face it, right? You have seen this slide already. AI is everywhere. Every industry is talking about it. And some say that if you haven't deployed an AI agent, your business is already obsolete. And
yeah, others are saying that AI is going to completely change how work gets done. So zero-click search, the fact that more than 50% of marketers have incorporated AI into some of their workflow, it's pretty clear that the baseline has completely shifted.
Yeah, and this is true. I mean, AI is now doing incredible things, right? We talk about exponential thinking, linear thinking. So there are things that were not possible like a few years ago now. Now you cannot even imagine are possible. So that's true, but at the same time, if you don't understand the technology, you can introduce new way of failing that can hurt your business pretty bad if you don't understand what you're doing and if you don't pick the right tool for the right task.
Yeah, and to understand where we're going, I think it's really helpful to know where we came from. Can you walk us through it?
We'd love to. So let's dive in. Let's go back all the way to the 80s, for those who remember that. I do. I wrote my first line of code at that time, and we were using handwritten rules, right? Like a deterministic logic, like some if-then, a lot of complex if-then statement to describe the system, how it works, and what the output should be. So it works really great, but obviously the limitation there were that it did not learn from the data. So like when you handcraft your segment today, right? The minute you do that, you do it very well, but the next day it might be obsolete already. So that was a paradigm at that time. So the period that followed that in the 90s and 2000, a lot of machine learning model based on really extracting from the data, learning from the data, what are the patterns, how to predict this pattern came about. A famous example that is relevant for this audience here on the marketing is the multi-arm bandit, contextual multi-arm bandit. So this model is important because this was enabling the first content personalization engine deployed at the internet scale. And you remember who did that?
Yeah, it was Yahoo News. And it was one of the most popular news sites for quite a while. The multi-arm bandit is still a pretty popular algorithm today, just for its simplicity. But we're moving on from the multi-arm bandit. What comes next?
So after that, deep learning came about. And deep learning was not new. It was invented in the 60s, actually, right? But that was the so-called the ice age of AI. At that time, there were no computer that were powerful enough to be able to train this model and model that were large enough to provide good prediction. So this stayed still for a long time. And then around 2010 or so, with the advance of cloud computing, now you can run by the hour like very big machine and deploy very large model neural network model like this. And so now this become practical, and this enable a lot of different breakthrough in computer vision and in sequential network. So now AI not only can analyze an image, figure out if there is a product in this image, what kind of product, classify if this is a cat or a dog, or even recognize your face. But by combining computer vision and sequential network, now you can predict, like, for example, the next frame of a video. It didn't work really well. It was still a little bit clunky, but definitely starting to doing that. And building on all of this research and all of this development, in 2017, there was some kind of a revolution. So Google published this paper, Attention is All You Need. And that was a new architecture of neural network called a transformer architecture based on attention network. And the power of this new network is that they were very good and very powerful, better than anything else done before, at understanding the relationship between data points, right? And at predicting what is the next step. So this was so good and so popular that it actually became the foundation of every AI noise you hear today, right? So every time today when you hear about AI, underneath there is a transformer architecture. And this enabled two things. And if you coming out of this workshop with only one takeaway, that will be it, right? Two things. First, generative AI, like conversational AI, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and so on. And wrapping this type of model into a system, into a feedback loop with eventually human in the loop, you can build AI agent. So that's the first thing that this enables. And the transformer architecture in that case is trained on language, image, for common purpose, right? And then the second thing is you take exactly the same architecture, maybe with some tweaks, and you train it on very specific data with a very specific objective. And that become like predictive, very accurate predictive models. So I'm going to start describing the first one, like the predictive model. So a transformer that is trained on very specific data with a very specific objective. This is like when every time you want to make a very accurate prediction, when your use case requires very accurate metrics and to be predicted, this is a type of model that you want to use today. One example that actually is mind-blowing to me is the DeepMind team that is now part of Google. In 2024, they won the Nobel Prize for predicting the 3D structure of protein. So to put this in perspective, 3D structure of protein is very important for the biomedical field, right? This is how you can develop and invent new drugs. The whole community in 1 year, every year since many decades, was predicting something like 15 to 20 new molecules every year, right? To predict like what's going to be the next drugs and the next cure, right? In 1 year, when they come up with this in 2024, in 1 year, they predict 150,000 molecules. So this gives you an idea of how fast these things are going. So think about that. Translate that into your industry. And when people say this thing's going to be disruptive, this is really true. This is going to really happen and really disrupt the different industry. Obviously, if you want to translate that in marketing, and when it comes to predict the behavior of your customer, what's going to be the next step, or predict like very precise metrics, like what's going to be your revenue or your lift, you want to use this type of approach, right? You want to really train, state-of-the-art architecture on your data for very precise objective. So, Aaron, can you talk about now the second aspect of AI?
So on the other hand, we have generative AI. These are your AI agents, assistants, your chatbots. This is the AI that we are kind of all thinking about day in and day out nowadays. So these are also based on the transformer model, but they're trained on a massive corpus of text, documents, images, audio, code, etc. And they're really tuned for conversational use cases. So when you give them information, they're able to decode that language, and then they produce a response. The generative AI is used for automation. It can do reasoning tasks. It can do some limited creative things like producing images or video. And it ends up being kind of the fundamental basis of agents, which we'll get into a little bit more later. They work really well when you can handle some non-determinism, when unexpected responses or occasional hallucinations are okay. So instead of expecting the AI to produce a flawless result, you use this human-in-the-loop framework, where you are the editor or the curator. You're the one who's responsible for that final output. So clearly, we need to be using both predictive AI and generative AI in tandem to build a successful marketing program. So Stefan, why don't you talk us through predictive AI and how we can apply it to our marketing programs?
Sure. So this diagram here represents a given customer, a given contact in your audience, the interaction that he might have with your creative library and your marketing creative. So in that case, you might click on a pair of glasses, short, eventually you convert, you buy a pair of shorts. So older model, previous generation model, like the multi-arm bandit that we talked about earlier, they will consider the whole interaction here and analyze in aggregate what is your customer profile in aggregate. Right? So in that case, if it happens to be, eventually they will recommend you more shirt because this is the most popular pattern. So they are very good at this, right? However, when it comes to, sorry.
Well, 1 second.
Yes.
So the multi-arm bandit, my understanding is that it works pretty well when you don't know a lot about a customer, right?
Yep.
But it tends towards things that are popular. It might even show you things you've seen before, right?
Yep.
Which is fine if you don't know much about the person.
Yeah, it works in many cases, right? But the customer profile and its next behavior is more complex than that, right? So it's more subtle than that. So in contrast, what the transformer is doing is looking at the whole sequence, what they click, what they buy on, what they convert on, in the order that it happens, right? So the order matters, and they are able to predict what is the next step. The same way ChatGPT is predicting the next word, here transformers that are trained on marketing data will train what is the next behavior, what is the next creative that is the most likely to match the preference of your customer. So the sequential model will do this next tech prediction. So for example, here, instead of predicting, let's say, the most popular shirt or the most popular shirt you are likely to like and buy, it will predict like things like, for example, a pair of shoes. That is not necessarily what you have done before, but what makes the most sense as the next step as a customer. In addition to this, you can inject objective into the training of the model. So for example, you can target revenue optimization or click optimization and really tune the model to maximize that kind of metrics. So not surprisingly, this is much better, much subtle than just a general multi-arm bandit model that cannot capture all the detail that matters in the customer.
So what does this look like in practice?
So for CRM, obviously this is just one aspect, right? You definitely want to predict what is the best content, but you also want to predict when is the best time, what is the best frequency for that content. So for content, we talk about that. You can use like state-of-the-art transformer architecture, train on your data. You can even improve the content by using, for example, other model like a subject line personalization model, not necessarily to generate that, but to be able to predict out of, let's say, 10 or 12 candidates, which one gonna work better with each contact. Also, instead of blasting email at 8 a.m. every morning, you can use send time model so that to analyze every temporal pattern for every contact and pick the right time to maximize the probability of click. And obviously, in terms of frequency, you can find the sweet spot between maximizing the probability of clicking and engaging while minimizing the probability of a costly churn, right, by overwhelming and generating fatigue for your customer. So this combination of fundamental model and few others allow you to get the best prediction using specific model trained for your specific data and specific objective. Okay, so now, Aaron, can you explain us how we can use this in tandem with AI agents?
Sure. Yeah, so AI agents are integrated into the marketing platform as helpful assistants that help you get work done. They don't remove the marketer, right? They augment the marketer. They remove that tedious, toilsome work that often gets in the way of your campaign or your content creation. So we have a few examples here. First is this content creation assistant. This can take things like your dynamic data and maybe your brand style guide and assemble it into pre-built creative objects that you can send through your emails or through your text messages or mobile push messages. So gone are the days where you're having to manually build all of these different variants for your different offers or your different languages or things like that. The second is a subject line assistant. So this subject line assistant uses an LLM and maybe your brand's language style guide to scale your creative copy. And you can actually give the agent feedback, and it can incorporate that into future generation. And then finally, an analytics assistant. So this analytics assistant works, instead of you having to dump reports out of your various systems, comb through spreadsheets, you can just give it a natural language question, and it will transform that into a sophisticated query and something that might take your analyst a couple hours to compile and run. You get that answer right away. Not only that, it can give you some actionable insights. How can I use this information to continue to improve my program? And then you can incorporate that strategy into some of your future work. So these are 3 example agents. What we're going to do next is we're just going to look under the hood. I think once you understand the anatomy of an agent, you can start to imagine how you can build these for yourself. So at the core of the agent is the LLM itself. This is the large language model that's built on top of that transformer architecture. It's really designed for ingesting and outputting language. We need to learn more about what goes around this, what makes this simple chatbot turn into a sophisticated agent. It starts with our user prompt. So the user prompt is the thing that you say in the moment to the agent. It's the task at hand that you're asking it to do. So if we're trying to generate copy for a push notification, here's where we would say, create the message for a back-in-stock push notification. Now, that doesn't contain a whole lot of information. If you've put that information into ChatGPT in a brand new ChatGPT session, it gives an answer. It's probably not going to meet the standards that you would have for it. And so that's where we add in all this additional context around the LLM. The first is the system prompt. So you can think of the system prompt as being the guidelines or the set of steps that the agent needs to take in order to accomplish this particular task. So in the example I just gave, or these are the rules or the constraints that the agent has to operate in. So in the example I just gave, it might be something like take the creative that the user has specified and write body copy. Keep it between 12 and 15 words. Make sure you lead with the benefit. Have a clear call to action at the end. So those are the instructions, and you set those once. They can obviously be tuned over time, but you set those once, and you don't have to supply that information each time you want to use this agent. It gets saved and reused and injected into the session each time. Next, we have the short-term memory. So short-term memory is the actual conversation. It's everything that's been said up until this moment. And it's really important to have the short-term memory because otherwise, every time you talked to the agent, it would be starting from scratch over and over, right? So this is why when you respond to your agent and say something like, make it punchier or drop the second sentence, it is refining its first draft. It's not starting over each time. Next, we have the long-term memory. So this is the accumulated knowledge that you and or the agent have gathered from using this over time. This is where a lot of your preferences will show up. Maybe you actually even store your brand style guide here. If you've ever rejected certain phrases over and over, this is the place where that information gets stored. And then it gets incorporated into future sessions of the agent. And so you don't really have to police its performance all the time. You can just say, please remember that, and it will get put into the long-term memory. And then finally, we have tools or actions. So these are the things that really ground your agent in the real world. You can reach out to external systems. Maybe you have a tool that allows you to actually go to the product landing page and gather product details to inform that body copy, or maybe live pricing information from your website. You could also even reference that creative object yourself in your marketing platform. If you work alongside of others, if you're collaborating, maybe you're working with an approver in Slack or over email. It can actually reference the message and incorporate some of the feedback that you've got from someone else. So I think there's a whole bunch of other things that we could do with tools or actions. I don't know, do you have any ideas, Stefan?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the predictive AI model, you can give access to your agent to the various predictive AI model that we talked about earlier, and make your agent smart and accurate. So for example, if you ask your agent to generate a set of subject line, like we talked about, it will happily do that, and you can approve and select the one you like. But then when it comes to what is the probability for each subject line, for each of your contacts, then if you give access to the predictive model via a tool, now the LLM can, instead of guessing, right, even if he has a lot of context, instead of guessing what is his number, he can use the accurate prediction from the AI model and return an accurate answer. And this is how you can automate a very smart and accurate agent.
Right. So that's the anatomy of an agent. It's pretty simple. I think once you understand it, you can kind of begin thinking about how can I use this to automate a tedious task? How can I use it to make my marketing team more effective and more efficient? So that's the end of our talk. We really appreciate the time we got to spend with you this morning. Thank you.